Hi everyone, and welcome to the Introducing Solids webinar. With this webinar, I hope to answer any questions you should have when it comes to introducing solids to your little one. However, if you should have additional questions after this presentation, you can call the clinic and say you'd like to make an appointment to speak with the dietitian, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions you should have. You do not need a referral to chat with me one-on-one. Here's the agenda for today's webinar. I'll start by talking about when we want to introduce solid foods, what some ideal first foods are, how to feed your little one with some of the different approaches when it comes to introducing solids nowadays, the updated food allergy guidelines, and the differences between choking and gagging and how to reduce the risks of choking. When to introduce solids to your little one. The official guidelines from Health Canada state that solids should be introduced around 6 months of age, paying attention to the individual cues or what we call signs of readiness. So now we don't necessarily go just by age, but it's age combined with these individual cues that we're going to watch out for. It's important to remember that every baby is unique and develops at different rates, so really try not to compare to other siblings or friends or family members when it comes to introducing solids to your little one. Another thing to remember is that babies do not require teeth in order to start solid foods. Infants are developmentally ready for solid foods around 6 months of age. If we introduce solids too early or too late, there are certain risks associated with doing so. When we talk about introducing solid foods too early, this is what we define as before 4 months of age. When introducing solid foods too early, some of the biggest risks are an immature ability to swallow, which can lead to increased risk of choking and even aspiration, an immature digestive system, which can increase the risk of food allergies, the possibility of an increased risk for iron deficiency, as iron absorption from breast milk is decreased when the milk comes into contact with food in the small intestine. And one of the biggest concerns is that your little one might stop drinking breast milk or formula or start drinking less breast milk or formula at this time. And breast milk and formula is still the main source of nutrition at this time, so that is a big concern that they might not be meeting all of their nutrient needs if we introduce solid foods too early. I'll just note that although these risks are associated with introducing solid foods earlier than 4 months of age, the recommendations from Health Canada and the World Health Organization are still to introduce solid foods closer to 6 months of age over earlier around 4 months. As I mentioned on the other slide, if we delay introducing solid foods too late after 6 months of age, there is also risks associated with doing so. One of the biggest risks is that your little one might not be getting all the nutrients they need in order to support their continued healthy growth and development, a key nutrient at this time being iron, which I'll cover more in the coming slides. Additionally, your little one might be slower at accepting and trying new foods and textures. They also may have difficulties chewing these more complex textures. So what are these signs of readiness that we're looking for? One of the main ones you want to look for is that your little one is able to sit up with minimal support. They don't have to be able to sit up fully on their own, but minimal support and able to hold their head steady, meaning they can hold their head upright and good control with their neck, that they're able to turn their head away to signal that they don't want any more food at this time. This will be a key concept that I'll discuss more in the coming slides when I touch on the principles of responsive feeding. Other things that we may look out for are that they're starting to bring everything up to their mouth. Hands, toys, anything seems to be going up to their mouth. They also may be watching you and showing an interest when you're eating food and trying to reach out and grab at some of the food that you're consuming. We have just covered when to introduce solid foods, and now we're going to shift gears to talk about what the first foods should be. The first food should be iron-rich. Maintaining adequate iron is essential for infant growth and brain development. Deficiencies during infancy and early childhood may have serious and irreversible effects. Most infants are born with sufficient stores of iron to meet their iron needs until around 6 months of age. At 6 months of age, iron stores are starting to get depleted, and breast milk and formula can no longer meet their needs alone. The period of 7 to 12 months is a time of a rapid growth and development for your little one, so their iron needs greatly increase. As you can see on the slide there, babies 0 to 6 months require about 0.27 milligrams of iron a day, where from 7 to 12 months it jumps all the way to 11 milligrams per day. I just put these requirements on the slide there for reference. I don't want you to get too focused on calculating exactly how many milligrams of iron your little one is consuming. The idea is just to offer iron-rich foods first, and I'll just touch a little bit about this 11 milligrams of iron per day. These requirements were based on the assumption that your baby is not eating any meat and therefore only getting sources of what we call non-heme iron. Non-heme iron is not as bioavailable in the body, meaning it is less efficiently absorbed compared to heme iron sources from those in meat, so the higher iron requirements were set. So, if your little one is going to be consuming meat, which is a heme source of iron, then the 11 milligrams per day is slightly inflated. I'll touch more on the different types of iron in food in the next slide. Before moving to talk about the different types of iron found in food, we'll just touch briefly on some of the signs of iron deficiency. Some of the main ones would be slow growth, pale skin, dark circles under the eyes, no appetite, and irritability. If you notice any of these signs, speak to your doctor to check about an iron deficiency. Some babies that would be at higher risk for iron deficiency include any preterm infants, infants born small for gestational age, infants born from a mom that was deficient in iron, or a mom with gestational diabetes. Once solids are introduced around 6 months of age, infants should be offered iron-rich foods 2 or more times a day, and from 12 to 24 months, iron-rich foods should be offered at each meal. As I mentioned on the other slide, there's 2 types of iron found in foods. One type of iron is called heme iron. This type of iron is found in animal products and is absorbed very well in the body. So even small servings of meat, poultry, or fish can contribute greatly to your infant's overall iron intake. The other type of iron is called non-heme iron. Non-heme iron is found in plant sources. Some of the best non-heme iron sources being legumes, various nuts and seeds, certain vegetables such as the dark green leafy ones, certain dried fruit like apricot or prunes, non-heme iron is not as well absorbed in the body compared to heme iron. However, with that being said, we can enhance the absorption of non-heme iron by pairing it with a source of vitamin C. So think any fruit or vegetable paired with a non-heme iron-rich food can enhance the absorption of the iron out of that food product. So for example, take lentils paired with sweet potato, for example. Lentils are a great source of non-heme iron, and sweet potato is an excellent source of vitamin C. Additionally, you can pair non-heme iron and heme iron sources together. So if you wanted to pair ground beef with black beans, for example, you would enhance the absorption of the non-heme iron out of the black beans by pairing it with ground beef. Getting enough iron is so important for maintaining your baby's healthy growth and development at this time. So here are a few tips to help make sure they get enough iron. As I mentioned on the other slide, offer an iron-rich food at each meal and pair it with a source of vitamin C to enhance the absorption of that iron. Additionally, you can try baking with an iron-fortified cereal. You can often swap out half the flour in a recipe for iron-fortified cereal. Try it in various finger food recipes such as baby pancakes or muffins. You can also use iron-fortified cereal to coat slippery foods such as a ripe banana or avocado wedge. By rolling these slippery foods in iron-fortified cereal, it helps increase the texture and makes it easier for your little one to pick up when offering finger foods or doing self-feeding. Additionally, try pureeing meat into a dip and spreading it thinly on toast strips, or you can also mix pureed meat into iron-fortified cereal to really enhance the absorption of the iron out of the cereal. And lastly, try cooking in cast iron pans or using something called the lucky iron fish. Some of the iron will leach out of the cast iron pan when cooking, and the same principle works with the lucky iron fish. You can put the lucky iron fish when boiling up, say, pasta noodles as a finger food for your little one, when cooking any vegetables or anything in water. Some of the iron out of the fish will leach out into the food to enhance the iron content of that food. Here are a few examples of different iron-rich foods in varying textures that you can try offering at each meal to help meet your infant's iron needs. As you can see with the pictures there, when it comes to offering meat, the general rule of thumb is that the younger the infant, the bigger the piece of meat. By offering a bigger piece of meat, it allows your baby to hold on to it while sucking, mashing, gnawing it without posing a choking risk. For babies 6 to 9 months, offer meat cut into 2 to 3 inch strips that are roughly the size of 2 fingers. For infants 9 to 12 months, meat can be sliced thinner or shredded into smaller bits as they have developed the pincher grasp at this time. As you can see in the pictures there, with the purple plate and the blue plate, the larger strips of chicken and beef or the plant-based option would be suitable for a younger infant, and then the smaller bits would be suitable for an older infant. Now let's cover some other key nutrients for your baby. Infants need to consume additional fat in order to support their healthy growth and development. This is particularly important for healthy brain development. The most abundant fat in the brain is called DHA. This is a type of omega-3 fatty acid. DHA is a key building block of the rapidly developing brain. Omega-3 fatty acids are referred to as essential fatty acids because our body cannot produce them, and therefore we need to consume them from our food. The richest sources of DHA are fatty fish such as salmon, herring, mackerel, oysters, shrimp, fish oil supplements, or algae supplements. DHA is naturally found in breast milk, but the amount of DHA varies depending on the level of DHA in the mother's diet. So if the mother does not regularly consume DHA-rich foods or take an omega-3 supplement, then the DHA levels would be pretty low in her breast milk. There is also quite a few infant formulas fortified with extra DHA on the market now as well. Other healthy fats for your little one would be the fats found in the various nut and seed butters, avocados, using olive oil as a cooking oil when making up their foods as well. You can also do pureed salmon, or you can make finger food fish cakes with salmon would be a great way to get some DHA into them as well. Babies also require sufficient protein in order for building healthy tissue and muscle development and supporting development of a healthy immune system. One way to look at protein-rich foods is that most foods that are excellent sources of protein are also excellent sources of iron as well. Now let's shift gears to talk about how to introduce solids to your little one. In the beginning, start offering solids at 1 meal per day in small amounts and gradually offer more food based on your baby's cues, following the principles of responsive feeding, which I'll cover in the coming slides. Generally, from 6 to 7 months, solids are offered once per day, and by 9 months of age, solids are offered 3 times a day. Introducing solids is sometimes referred to as complementary feeding. That is because breast milk and formula is still the main source of nutrition at this time, and solid food merely complements the breast milk or formula. The World Health Organization estimates that from 6 to 8 months, solid foods contribute roughly 1/5 of the total energy needs for your infant. Remember, when introducing solid foods, we want to keep meal times pleasant and enjoyable, and it's an opportunity for your little one to learn new skills. So let your baby explore by touching and tasting foods. It's not recommended to also coax your baby to eat by playing games such as the airplane. In the webinar so far, I have mentioned responsive feeding a few times. So what is responsive feeding? Responsive feeding is the process of feeding in response to your baby's natural cues for hunger and fullness. The idea is to let your little one take the lead as they express hunger or fullness cues, either verbally or non-verbally, and we react immediately by offering more food or by ending the mealtime. We want to follow the principles of responsive feeding because this helps your baby learn to develop and listen to their internal innate hunger and fullness cues. A few examples of hunger cues are opening their mouth, leaning towards food as if they're accepting or looking for the food, following the food with their eyes, they're reaching out and trying to grab for food, they're eating at a consistent pace. While some fullness cues are pushing the spoon away, pushing food away, closing their mouth when you offer food, or turning their head away from the spoon, spitting food out, or just slowing down their overall pace of eating are signs that they've had enough to eat and mealtime should be ended. When introducing solids, you want to pick a mealtime when baby is happy, playful, and well rested, as we want baby to associate the table with happiness and have the energy and gusto to learn how to eat food. I'll note that mealtime doesn't have to be the exact same time every day. For example, you can offer solids at breakfast during the week, and on weekends you can try dinner or whatever works best for your schedule and lifestyle. Try offering breast milk and or formula 30 minutes before mealtime, as this acts like a little appetizer for your little one and helps ensure baby isn't overly hungry and therefore getting easily frustrated by having to try something new. When introducing solids, you can offer purees or soft finger foods as the first foods. I'll touch more on this when I cover texture in the coming slides. Family mealtime provides exposure to different tastes, colors, textures, and creates an opportunity for role modeling of healthy eating habits. The social aspect of eating is also important, so it's recommended for the older infants to take part in family mealtime. We also want to avoid distractions like the TV or any toys present, as this will help your baby focus on eating and help prevent choking. In the next few slides, I'll cover the different approaches to introducing solids to your little one. There are two main approaches to introducing solids today. The first one being spoon feeding. This is also referred to as the traditional method. This method of introducing solids is the one that's been around for many years and is most likely how each of us was introduced solids by our parents or caregivers. So with this approach, infants are offered a very smooth puree that is spoon-fed to them passively by a parent or caregiver, and the texture is gradually progressed from a very smooth puree all the way working up to a soft finger food that your little one feeds themselves. In the more recent years, another approach to introducing solids has become quite popular. This approach is called baby-led weaning, which many of you have probably heard of and even have been recommended this method of introducing solids by friends or family members. So what is baby-led weaning? Baby-led weaning is the practice of skipping purees altogether. Infants are offered finger foods right from the start and are responsible for feeding themselves 100%. So you as a parent or caregiver do not intervene and feed them at all. With this method of feeding, there is some potential benefits and some potential concerns if not done properly. I'll discuss each of these in more detail in the coming slides, but just briefly we'll highlight some of the benefits and potential concerns. So some potential benefits of doing baby-led weaning is that your baby can explore food options at their own pace rather than being passively spoon-fed by an adult. This method of introducing solids truly follows what we call the division of responsibility or responsive feeding practices that we've already discussed. Also, by following baby-led weaning, it's been found that infants have improved dexterity through the self-feeding practices as it helps them develop better hand-eye coordination. They've also been found to have improved oral motor skills as they learn to create what we call a bolus, which is just a ball of food with the tongue, and then swallow. And with continued practice, they learn to move their tongue around like we do. You still get these benefits when you do follow the traditional method of introducing solids, but they seem to happen a little bit quicker with baby-led weaning since we are jumping right to self-feeding right from the start. Additionally, another benefit of baby-led weaning is it's been found that they have an improved palate and less likely to be a picky eater, as with this method of feeding, they are getting many what we call real foods and not any overly sweet purees right at the start. Now, some potential concerns with baby-led weaning is there's the potential for an increased risk of choking if the baby is not offered appropriate foods in the right texture. And additionally, another big concern with baby-led weaning is potential difficulty meeting their iron and other nutrient needs if iron-rich foods are not offered to the little one, and if the baby is not able to self-feed themselves enough. So this can be a potential concern if baby-led weaning is started a little bit too early. So I'll discuss each of these in more detail in the next slide. As I mentioned on the previous slide, with the right education and careful planning, many of the risks associated with baby-led weaning can be greatly reduced. Firstly, to reduce choking risk, we want to ensure appropriate finger foods in the right texture and shape are offered. For younger infants, which are 6 to 9 months, we want to offer foods in what we call a finger or log shape, so that this is easy for baby to pick up. With texture, we want it to be soft enough that you can squish between your index finger and thumb. This is a great way to ensure that it is soft enough for your baby to mash with their gums. As your little one starts to develop their pincher grasp, then foods can start to be offered in smaller bits. In the coming slides, I'll discuss the different grasps that your little one will develop and coordinating that with different food sizes. Getting enough iron. To ensure texture-appropriate iron-rich foods are offered at every meal is a great way to ensure your little one is meeting their iron needs. As discussed from earlier slides, when offering meat, we want to keep it moist. Try cooking meat with the skin on, as this helps lock in the juices and remove the skin before giving it to your little one. Also, don't overcook the meat and try cooking the meat in its own juices or broth or a sauce to help keep it extra tender as well. Additionally, offering more tender cuts of meat such as a drumstick, thigh, loin, which all have a little bit more fat on them, which make it a little bit more tender. Also, you can try placing meat in between parchment paper and lightly pounding before cooking. This helps tenderize it a little bit. Offering ground meat in meat fingers or meat patties is a great way to offer very soft, iron-rich meat to your little one. Cooking meat in a slow cooker or pressure cooker is another great way to make sure it's soft and texture appropriate for your little one. And if you're doing plant-based options, making sure those larger beans and pulses are squished if offering on their own, or you can make those bean or legume patties as we discussed in the iron section of the presentation. Lastly, to make sure your little one is meeting their nutrient needs, we want to ensure that we're not starting baby-led weaning prior to 6 months of age. It has been found that younger infants, which are closer to the 4 months of age, do not have the capacity to fully self-feed themselves enough. So if you're introducing solids a little bit earlier, then it is not recommended to solely do baby-led weaning until they are at least 6 months of age. Here are some visual representations of starter finger foods to offer your little one. In general, your goal is to make food easy for your baby to pick up and grasp. When they are first learning to eat, they have what we call the palmar grasp, and they generally rake things up with their fingers into their palms. This means that they can't really pick up things that are very small easily yet, because they have not learned that pincher grasp using their thumb or forefinger yet. So for shape, as discussed on the other slide, at around 6 months, most babies starting solids don't have that pincher grasp yet, so they pick foods up with their whole palm. So this is where that finger or log shape comes in really handy. Generally think of about the length and width of 1 to 2 fingers. And for texture, we want them to be soft enough that you can smush them gently with gentle pressure, between your thumb and forefinger. This means no raw carrots, apples, nuts, or tough chunks of meat yet. You'll notice on the slide there I do have a picture of steak in the bottom left corner. So you can offer meat cut in strips to your little one as in the picture there. This is ideal for your little one to suck on and remove the juices. The juices are actually quite rich in iron, B12, zinc, and some other nutrients. Once your little one is able to tear off things with their teeth, then it is no longer recommended to offer meat strips like that, as they can become a choking risk. You'll notice on the slide here too, I also have the avocado pieces rolled in various items such as ground coconut, almond flour, and ground flaxseed. You can also use iron fortified cereal for this as well. Rolling in something like that increases the texture of what we call a slippery food item, so it makes it easier for your little one to pick up. And by using things like iron fortified cereal, you're also increasing the iron content of that food item. When it comes to eggs, you can offer eggs in omelet strips as pictured on the slide there, or bigger pieces of scrambled egg. When it comes to veggies such as broccoli, you want to steam or roast it, and the stalk there serves as a handle, which is easy for your little baby to pick up, and then they just nibble at the tops of the vegetable. We do have apples offered here. Apples are one of the most common choking hazards, so we never want to offer raw apple at the start. You want to cut the apple thin and be sure to cook it until it's soft. And then once your infant is a little bit older, you can try grating the raw apple. We just don't want to offer just a big piece of raw apple because this is the food that is most commonly listed as being choked on during baby-led weaning. So here is a picture of the two different main grasps that your little one will start to develop as they get older. So at the start, they have what we call this palmar grasp. The palmar grasp is when your baby takes an entire 2 to 3 inch piece of food and places it in the palm of their hand with their fingers curling around the food. So this leaves a small portion sticking out at the top of their hand, which is what they'll chew or suck on. So this is why offering food in that log or finger shape is recommended. You'll also see on the right is the pincher grasp. So this starts to appear roughly around 9 months of age, but you'll notice them start to develop that, and it's not like a drastic change from the palmar to pincher grasp, so food can start to be offered in smaller bits working towards that pincher grasp. So a pincher grasp is when a baby uses their index finger and thumb to pick up a small piece of food. The baby will typically develop this around 9 months of age, but it can vary from infant to infant, and some show it slightly earlier, around 8 months. Now that I've covered the two main approaches for introducing solids to your little one, I really want to emphasize this point, is that it does not have to be all or nothing. Some of the very strong baby-led weaning advocates online state that you cannot combine baby-led weaning and purees together. However, that is simply not true. There is actually some advantages to combining these two feeding approaches together. By combining baby-led weaning and purees together, it stays true to those principles of responsive feeding. Because if we truly want to let our baby lead the feeding process, then we'll start with whatever method they tell us they are ready for. Additionally, by combining these two approaches, it allows for nutrient needs to be met. Allowing flexibility in your feeding approach helps ensure your baby is getting lots of good nutrition, in particular, those iron-rich foods. Following a combined feeding approach, doing baby-led weaning with the traditional approach actually follows the recommendations from Health Canada. In Nutrition for Healthy Term Infants, Health Canada recommends offering soft finger foods among the first complementary foods because it encourages self-feeding from the onset. Encouraging self-feeding is very important. Offering different textures takes advantage of a key window of opportunity for oral and motor development, such as jaw strength, strong teeth, proper speech development, and reducing the chance of picky eating because it gives baby a greater exposure to a variety of textures and flavors, and they are more willing to try new foods later on. Studies have shown that there is a key window of opportunity when it comes to introducing more complex textures to your little one, and this can really impact future eating behaviors. It appears that if we delay the introduction of lumpy textures beyond 9 months of age, this is associated with feeding difficulties in older children. All this to say is it is important to offer your little one a variety of textures, and they should not be stuck on a very smooth puree for too long. Just to touch on purees briefly, purees are an easy way to offer your baby key nutrients such as iron and to make sure they are consuming enough, especially at the start. Purees can be offered via spoon feeding or self-feeding. When spoon feeding purees to your little one, remember to pay attention for those hunger and fullness cues. And if you're self-feeding, doing baby-led weaning, purees can still be used. A puree can be offered as a dip, and you can give your little one a dipping tool or a utensil to practice eating. There is no official recommendations on when to start using utensils. The best place to start is just by role modeling utensil use. So even if you haven't started introducing solids to your little one yet, you can pull them up in their high chair to the table with you at mealtime and let them watch you use your utensil to scoop and prick food and bring it up to your mouth. You can also try giving them a utensil to play with so they can wave around, get used to it, play with it in their mouth. Some tips on how to teach your baby to use a utensil. You can try using the preloaded spoon or fork approach. By doing this, you would preload a spoon or fork and offer it to your little one and allow them to self-feed themselves, and then you can continue swapping preloaded utensils to your little one and allow them to bring it up to their mouth. You can also give your little one a little bit of a puree and allow them to try dunking the utensil in it and bringing it up to their mouth to self-feed 100% on their own. The first half of the presentation talked about introducing solids to younger infants. Now we'll shift gears to talk about the recommendations for older infants, defined as from 9 to 12 months of age. So around 9 months of age, baby is starting to master that pincher grasp. So this means that they can start to handle smaller pieces of food. Additionally, the texture or firmness of foods can be increased. So you can try shortening the cooking time slightly for veggies. You can also try roasting them instead of always steaming them. You could also try offering grated raw fruit or vegetables such as grated raw apple or grated carrots. Starting at 9 months of age too, whole cow's milk can be introduced if baby is consuming a good variety of foods on a regular basis, and in particular iron-rich foods. I'll discuss more on cow's milk in the coming slides. At this time too, from 9 to 12 months, solid food intake now represents about half of their total energy needs, and then by 12 months, solid foods will represent about 2/3 of their total energy needs. So as you can see from when we first introduced solid foods back at 6 months, all the way till 12 months, we're gradually changing the ratio of solids to breast milk and or formula. In between 9 to 12 months of age, healthy term infants can be offered pasteurized, homogenized cow's milk. It is important to offer full fat milk as babies require that additional fat to support their continued healthy growth and development. If you do not wish to offer homogenized cow's milk, then whole goat's milk fortified with vitamin D can be offered as an alternative to cow's milk once an infant is 9 to 12 months of age and eating iron-rich foods at most meals. I'll just note that preterm infants should not receive cow's milk until they are 12 months corrected age. To reduce the risk of iron deficiency, it is important for older infants to consume iron-rich foods at most meals before milk is offered. After 6 months of age, milk can be used in baking or cooking, and milk products such as cheese and yogurt can be introduced along with a variety of other iron-rich foods. For infants younger than 9 months of age not receiving breast milk, commercial infant formula will meet the nutrient needs of infants and is the only recommended alternative to breast milk. So why do we not want to introduce cow's milk before 9 months of age? Cow's milk to drink is not appropriate for infants younger than 9 months of age as it is lower in iron. It may displace iron-rich foods. It can inhibit the absorption of iron due to the high calcium content of it. It is lower in the essential fatty acids needed for proper brain development. And the proteins found in cow's milk are less digestible by younger infants. Just some specific points regarding breastfeeding. Breastfeeding can be continued for up to 2 years and beyond as long as mom and child want to continue. If a parent chooses to offer whole cow's milk to a breastfed infant, then it is best to offer it at meals and snacks in an open cup. For children 1 year and older, the total amount of both milk and breast milk should not be more than 2 cups to prevent iron deficiency. Children who are overly reliant on milk or breast milk may consume insufficient amounts of complementary foods, which can increase the risk of nutrient deficiencies such as iron. I'll also just note, if you are formula feeding, then the recommendation is to be fully switched to full-fat cow's milk by 12 months of age. When offering cow's milk, offer 2 cups of milk per day to ensure your little one is getting those important nutrients for growth. However, do not offer more than 3 cups of milk per day, as too much milk can cause your child to be less interested in food, lead to picky eating, low intake of iron since milk is low in iron and will replace the intake of foods containing iron, potential constipation if milk replaces consumption of foods containing fiber. Breast milk or homogenized cow's milk provides about 1/3 of a young child's energy requirements from 12 months of age. For children 12 to 24 months who are unable to drink milk due to an allergy, intolerance, or following a vegetarian or vegan eating pattern, it is advised that parents offer commercial infant follow-up soy formula until 2 years of age. A few tips for how to offer milk. We offer milk in several small servings per day rather than 2 large servings. Try offering half a cup at each meal and 1 snack. In between meals and snacks, only offer water. If your little one sips on milk in between meals, it can fill up their stomach and cause them to not eat much at meals or snacks. Only offer milk in an open cup, not a bottle. Spill-proof cups, cups with a straw, and sippy cups are not the same as an open cup and do not teach your child the important skill of drinking from an open cup. On the slide here, I have a comparison of some of the popular plant-based beverages available today compared to the nutritional value of cow's milk and goat's milk. Plant-based beverages are often lower in protein and energy than cow's milk, and they may also be lower in some nutrients like calcium and vitamin D. The official guidelines from Health Canada state to not introduce soy milk or another milk alternative until at least 2 years of age. The best vegan alternative milk available in Canada is soy milk. The main difference between soy milk and whole cow's milk is the calories and fat content. Because it is not recommended to switch to a lower fat cow's milk until 2 years of age, the official recommendations are to keep baby on a higher calorie soy formula until 2 years of age. Water may be introduced as a beverage at 6 months of age when the infant is learning to drink from an open cup. There is no recommended amount of water for an infant to drink between 6 and 12 months of age. However, amounts should be kept small in order to avoid interference with the intake of breast milk and formula. Expert opinion is that offering small amounts such as 2 to 3 ounces of water at a time to an infant is considered appropriate and would likely not interfere with the intake of breast milk and formula and solid foods. Health Canada recommends offering fluids in an open cup, stating that drinking from an open cup is an easily learned skill in infancy. At first, infants will need some assistance with managing the cup. In order to help your baby drink from an open cup, start by holding the cup against their mouth. At the start, the infant will use the familiar sucking pattern to drink, but they will learn to coordinate breathing, opening their mouth, and swallowing properly. Drinking from a sippy cup or training cup occurs by sucking, and therefore these cups do not support the development of mature drinking practices. By 12 to 14 months, infants should be drinking from an open cup and weaned from the bottle. Here is a visual summary of the meal progression from just starting out around 6 months of age to 12 months plus. When we're just starting out, a meal will likely just consist of a single food with a single texture present, and by 12 months of age and beyond, the foods offered will be very similar to that of the family meal. Here are some sample meal plans or outlines of what you can offer your baby based on their age. Remember that these are only a guide, and we want to trust that your little one knows how much they need to consume. As you can see in these meal plans, there is no volumes of food listed beside each meal or snack because every infant is different, so we really avoid specifying the exact volume of food that they need. In the coming slides, I'll cover the updated food allergy recommendations. Before we get into the revised guidelines, we'll just review what is a food allergy. A food allergy occurs when the immune system mistakes a specific protein found in a food as harmful. The foods most likely to cause an allergy in Canada are called the common food allergens, and the foods listed on the slide are the ones that the food allergy recommendations apply to. Food allergy recommendations have evolved in the last few years, with some newer recommendations coming out regarding infants at higher risk. To help stop food allergy from developing, the Canadian Pediatric Society recommends that common food allergens, in particular cooked egg and peanut, be fed early to infants deemed at high risk for developing a food allergy. Infants at higher risk for food allergy are said to have eczema or pre-existing food allergy, or an immediate family member with eczema, food allergy, asthma, or hay fever. For all other infants deemed at normal risk, the recommendation is to introduce common food allergens among the first foods when they start complementary feeding. When considering the early introduction of cooked egg and peanut for infants deemed at higher risk for food allergy, remember to always make sure your baby is developmentally ready for solid foods, and it is recommended to not introduce before 4 months of age. When introducing a common food allergen for the first time, we want to introduce them one at a time and at a time when your little one will be awake for 2 hours after in case allergy symptoms develop. I'll just note that feeding allergenic foods for the first time in most infants is considered safe and very rarely causes a serious reaction on the first exposure. I'll also note that you do not have to introduce foods your family does not consume. For example, vegetarian or vegan families do not need to introduce fish or eggs. That is something that you can decide as a family what you wish to do. This slide highlights the common food allergens and a few examples of foods that you can offer to give your little one exposure to that allergen. I'll just note that for almond butter and other seed butters like the tahini listed on the slide here, it is not appropriate to offer that on its own to your little one. You want to mix that either into breast milk or formula for a younger infant or into infant fortified cereal or another puree, or spread thinly on a toast strip to make sure that it is safe and not a choking hazard for your little one. In the next few slides, I'll discuss the differences between gagging and choking and some ways to reduce the risks of choking. Gagging is a perfectly normal part of the weaning process. Gagging is the natural way that your baby protects itself from choking. A younger baby's gag reflex is actually farther forward in the mouth to help better protect them from choking, and as they get older, it will gradually start to move farther back in their throat. So coughing, gagging, and expelling food will be common during the first few months as they're consuming solids. Remember that eating solid foods is a new skill for your little one to learn, so it takes practice. Your baby might gag a lot, but that is just their body keeping them safe as they learn how much food to put in their mouth, how to move it around in their mouth, and how much to swallow at one time. When your baby is gagging, they will loudly cough, sputter, and make gagging sounds. Their tongue will thrust forward and they will expel the food out to prevent choking. Choking, on the other hand, is a sign that your baby's airway is blocked. A piece of food has partially or fully blocked their windpipe and their gag reflex did not successfully force the food out. If your baby is choking, they'll be quiet, they'll have trouble coughing, and they might also have trouble breathing. Use this rhyme to help remember the differences between choking and gagging. Loud and red, let them go ahead. Silent and blue, they need help from you. So loud and red equals gagging. We want to let them work it out. Baby is gagging and their face will often go red. They'll open their mouth, their tongue will thrust forward. Don't intervene. Let baby work through the gagging on their own. If you try to remove the food, you could actually push it farther back and lodge it in their throat and turn it into a choke. Silent and blue equals choking, and your baby needs help. When your baby is choking, their face and lips will usually turn blue, and they will have trouble coughing or may not be able to cough at all. If they can cough a bit, this is a good sign that the blockage is only partial. Perform baby CPR to help stop the choking. Linked below this presentation is a YouTube video from the Canadian Red Cross for how to do CPR on an infant. A few tips to help reduce gagging. Make sure your baby is secure in a high chair, sitting upright and not slouching to the side. It is said that stability at the hips equals success at the lips. So when seating your little one in a high chair, we want to make sure that they're sitting upright with their hips and knees both at 90 degrees and their feet supported. and their elbow should be able to rest on the tray in front of them. Also, when it comes to meal times, we want to try to minimize the distractions as much as possible for your little one, as having too many toys, noise, smartphones, or the TV going on can distract your little one, and they can sometimes forget that they have food in their mouth. If your little one is putting too much food in their mouth at once, try giving them less food in front of them at one time. Only give them 1 or 2 finger foods at a time. Don't load up the tray all at once if they're shoveling it all into their mouth at one time. If spoon feeding, you can try offering a smaller spoon and put less food on it if they seem to be gagging a lot with the spoon. A few tips for how to reduce the risk of choking. We always want to supervise baby when they're eating. We want to make sure that they are securely strapped into a high chair, and we want to make sure they are developmentally ready to eat. And on the slide here, I have examples of how to offer what we call the dangerous foods that have a greater likelihood of causing a choke. We want to make sure that they're offered in appropriate ways. So spreading the chunky nut butter thinly on toast or mixed into a cereal. Hard fruits and vegetables, we want to make sure they're grated or cooked until they're soft. Stringy foods like celery and pineapple, chopping them finely. And there's certain foods that we do not want to offer before 4 years of age, such as small foods like whole nuts and seeds, hard candy, cough drops, sticky foods like gum or marshmallows as well. Just to touch briefly on stool, starting solids will change the color and texture and likely frequency of your baby's stool. Some days your baby may have a bowel movement and other days they may have multiple. Generally, if the stools are soft and easy to pass, then your baby is not constipated. If you do have concerns, definitely speak to your baby's healthcare provider. Just to touch briefly on constipation. Before I touch on constipation, what does normal baby poop look like? There is actually no one way that your baby's poop should look like, and it ultimately depends on a number of factors such as the feeding type, whether they were exclusively breastfed or formula fed, and whether solid foods have been introduced or not. So how do you know if your little one is constipated? Constipation can be defined as the lack of frequency in poops or the consistency of poops. Baby constipation is often defined when the poop is hard and dry and seemingly difficult or painful to pass. You might hear them making noises, turning red as they try to push the bowel movement out. What causes constipation? The addition of solids can cause constipation. As remember, leading up to this point, your baby has only had to deal with breast milk or formula, and now their gut has to adjust to digesting pieces of real food. Some other reasons typically revolve around changes in schedules, very similar to us as adults. Many of us probably notice changes in our bowel habits when our schedule is off if we've been traveling, for example. A few constipation relief strategies. Fluids. You can try introducing fluids to your little one once you've started offering solids, as water helps keep things soft and easier moving along the GI tract. Remember, from 6 to 12 months, it is recommended to offer small amounts of water, only 2 to 3 ounces at a time. You can also try getting your baby moving. A lot of us adults get a little backed up when we have been less active than normal, so if your baby isn't moving yet, you can try stimulating things by doing the bicycle movement with their legs or giving them some time to crawl around if they are moving around. You can also try tummy massage. This is a gentle massage to help stimulate the bowels, and a popular massage is the I love you, where you gently spell out I love you on your little one's belly, and this helps get things moving through their bowels. And lastly, we can offer some higher fiber foods. Here are a few examples of some foods that are particularly high in fiber. Just a note, when it comes to introducing fiber, we want to go gradually and add fiber slow to your little one's diet, as adding too much fiber at one time can actually shock the gut and make constipation worse. Generally, when we're focusing on adding in more fiber too, we want to make sure they have enough fluid to help keep things soft. Here are a few additional resources where you can get some more information on introducing solid foods to your little one. There are some great books written by Canadian dietitians. The Better Baby Food book there is written by 2 dietitians at the Sick Children's Hospital in Toronto. There's a great one on baby-led weaning by a dietitian named Jennifer House from out in Alberta. And then The Food to Grow On is written by 2 other dietitians that actually covers prenatal nutrition all the way to young children nutrition. The Growing Up Gourmet is a great resource as well, as it has some baby food recipes and family food recipes on the opposite side of the page, so it can make things a little bit easier with ideas of how you can adapt the family meal to suit your little one's needs. Some other great websites are the Ellen Satter Institute, discusses the division of responsibility and responsive feeding practices and some strategies to deal with picky eating. Baby Foodie and Solid Starts both have great examples of how to offer various foods based on your infant's age. And Unlock Food is a great website by Canadian dietitians covering all different topics when it comes to introducing solids to your little one, in addition to nutrition recommendations for the whole lifespan. Also, below this webpage, or below this webinar, sorry, you will find some additional links to various resources on the web that you can find more information on introducing solids to your little one. And if you do have further questions when it comes to introducing solid foods to your little one, you're more than welcome to call the clinic to make an appointment to speak with myself or the dietitian about any questions you might have when it comes to introducing solid foods to your little one. Thank you for watching this webinar.